Did it work? Am I working? Is it on? People seeing me? Yays. I think we're good. That looks good. That looks good. And that looks good. Nice. Okay. So um, as a recap to what I did, I was disconnected for about 5 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer. This is like the first time I'm playing with YouTube Studio and going live on YouTube and stuff. So I wanted to share my second monitor because we're going to be playing with ASP.NET Core, and I like to play in virtual machines. But I couldn't share it in YouTube Live. I didn't know that, so I downloaded and installed the Open Broadcaster software system really quickly. Well, like 5, 6, 7 minutes or so. But in that period of time, I was able to figure out how to connect the two. And so the OBS software requires a key from YouTube so that way it can connect to the stream securely and appropriately. And apparently it wouldn't let me like go live instantaneously. It kept like scheduling it for like the first one was scheduled for 6:45, and then I changed something, then it went to 6:50. But after everything like synced up, then the like go live button clicked on or enabled or whatever, and I was able to finally connect. So that's what happened to me right now, just FYI. But now we're connected, and now I should be able to like add a device. Let me see, display capture, and okay, let me hit this, but this one, awesome, and go. So I'm just waiting to see if it goes live. There's like a little delay. Word. All right. So whenever I said there's a delay to word, that's how big the delay was. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shut this guy down real quick because I don't want this one anymore. Can I just go shut down? No. Where? Nope. Off. So like I was saying before, I'm going to go ahead and walk us through creating a virtual machine that I'm going to use to do the webs, ASP.NET Core and stuff. And like I said, typically I like playing in virtual machines. They're typically pretty easy to stand up as long as you have all of the software that you want. And if you break them or whatever, you can always rebuild it. So that's what I'm going to do real quick. And going to find an ISO image. So what do we have here? So I don't have, where's Windows 10? Okay, here we go. Awesome. Yeah, let's do that. We'll roll that one. And we're going to call this one hack.net. Actually, I don't need this right now. Oh, okay, maybe I do. Hacking.net. Core. It's fine. And this, we'll just call this one hack.net. Next. Let's bump this up to 80. And next. What is it, like 8190 or something like that? And okay, 96, I think, 8196. And then bump these cores up. I'll just do that one. That should be sufficient. Natted is cool. I don't need that. That's cool. And cool. I think that's good. And finish. Awesome. So I'm going to go back here. Hold on. Is that how we do that? Okay, so what you just seen me do is basically begin the installation process of configuring or beginning the configuration process of setting up a virtual machine. And in the virtual machine, it'll be like my little lab environment that we can use to start playing with .NET Core. And the little hiccup you see right now was me trying to figure out how to switch from sharing my desktop to going back to the video so I can talk to you guys. So that just happened, and everything's going forward. So since we're good over here, I'm going to go and see if I can reshare this out, just in case there's people waiting for me. I doubt it, but maybe. I don't know. Let's go here. Manage. No, how do I do this? This one. There we go. Organizer. And one other place. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over here. And cool, it's moving forward, almost done. So what I'm going to do right now for this first little setup is basically get everything needed for .NET Core, .NET Core as well, and just ensure we have all of the tooling set up. So I'm going to walk us through that process and probably just launch the basic little MVC site, and we'll see how far we get. I don't want to go too long, only because I don't want these videos to stretch on for a significant amount of time. I want them to be consumable in small chunks, so that way as you're following along, you don't have a lot to contend with in terms of trying to find like where you left off at minute 45, at minute 62, so I'll try to keep it to like 30-45 minutes and go from there. If I feel those times need adjusting, I'll adjust, and if you want to see adjustments as well, please provide your input. I'm definitely open to constructive criticism, so please don't be afraid to share your thoughts on that. I am definitely responsive to most suggestions, okay? So that's what I plan on doing probably for the next 30 minutes or so. Just finishing up this virtual machine and getting everything set up for application development in Visual Studio and ASP.NET.Core and go from there. Okay, so Windows 10 is going. if you're like a student or work in different environments, you may have access to like academic licensing. There are different ways in which you can get a license to use in terms of development or developing. So there are a couple of different approaches that you can take. You should definitely double check all of your resources first to make sure that you stay in compliance with everything. But Microsoft has been very open into how they've been restructuring their licensing so that folks who want to dive in, either using virtual machines or their software, their normal operating system, they've been more flexible in opening into ways in which they allow us to access it, and then also ways that they've been disseminating it as well. So FYI. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out, and I can try to at least point you into the different websites that'll provide those resources. And so what I'm going to do over here is just go into full screen, so that way that's cool. And what I'm also going to do is show this site over here real quick. So I'm going to click off of the display and let it do its thing. And then I'm going to come over here and say ASP.net. I spelled it wrong. ASP.net. Cool. So let's close that one. Yeah, let's close those. And I think that can close, and that can close. That one will stay. This will stay. With that warning, please check your video resolution. The current resolution, which is not optimal. Alright, whatevs. I'm still rolling with it. So here's the ASP.NET site. And look at, you can try out .NET on Azure for free, 12 months of free services, and build .NET Cloud apps with your Azure free account. So awesome. There's like evidence to reflect that they definitely want to bring in more developers into their ecosystem and want to make that transition as seamless as possible. So again, if you're new to this world, don't feel overwhelmed by all of the things because there are a lot of things. And those that have been in the industry long enough, just learn how to manage being overwhelmed regularly such that it doesn't feel like we're overwhelmed. But trust me, the way technology evolves and has evolved throughout time, we definitely find ourselves in new situations. So yeah, that's fine. I'm on a virtual network anyway. So here's the site that you would go to, and you can actually go to like downloads, and depending upon the flavor of operating system you're running, Windows, Linux, Mac OS, or if you wanted to run it in a Docker environment, there are definitely different approaches for you to take. And also just want to quickly point out that so here is the .NET proper, right? The .NET proper framework 4.8 versus the .NET Core 3.1. And the differences between those two frameworks are Core has been completely rewritten for the most part, and also is open source. Whereas .NET Framework is not, it is source open, meaning you can see the source code, but it's not open source from the perspective of licensing, like the difference between copyright and copyleft, right? Free and open source software. And then the .NET Framework 4.8 also is like the legacy framework, right? The one that can look back to like .NET 1.1, right? And 2.0 and stuff. So it has all of that stuff in there. And what something else that is different is when they decided to transition down the path that has became .NET Core, one of the things they did was go back and break apart some of their monolithic libraries. You'll kind of have a better idea once you start seeing what we're doing in Visual Studio and programming. in terms of like how they broke apart some of the libraries and frameworks that we reference to use as an API to leverage all of the ecosystem that they've given us. And I'll speak more on it as we move forward in time, but I wanted to at least point out that they are different, pretty significantly different in some aspects. Um, the big thing is .NET Core is cross-platform. You can run it on Linux, Mac OS, whereas the proper framework you cannot. Okay, and so I'll leave that and go back to this over here. Because we are now in our virtual machine. It is now up and running. I'm going to go ahead and do just a couple of quick things. I'm going to leave Edge here for the most part until I'm actually ready to jump over into like Firefox and stuff. But for now, like I'm just going to go get like ASP.NET, and I'm going to go ahead and download it because I have to download it myself as well, right? And I want to build apps, right? I don't want to merely run apps. We're actually going to develop them, right? We're going to leverage the ecosystem versus just running a program, okay? And actually, I'm going to go and click on this one just so that way you can see the fact that they are providing the files for the different versions of the framework moving forward. Notice that these are end of life, and going from 1 to 2 to 2.1 and now into 3 and 3.1, there are breaking changes, meaning that you're not going to easily transition a 1.1 into like a 3.1 environment, or vice. You're not going to be able to like transition it easily in terms of, oh, your code's just going to work. You're going to have to restructure your code. You're going to have to rewrite your code in some significant portions in some different areas, depending upon where you're coming from and where you're going to. It isn't too cumbersome. It is complex at times. There are definitely guidelines you should follow and documentation that exists you should read through. If you're just starting off, I would just jump right into the .NET 3.1 and go from there. So that's what we're going to do. Go ahead and say 3.1. And so here, let me make this full screen really quickly, because I also want to point out some of this stuff, okay? So notice that there's actually a few different options for us at this point, okay? And again, if you don't necessarily have a background in this, you see this page and it's like, what do I do with this, right? I don't even understand what this page is trying to tell me. Therefore, I don't even necessarily know what option I should click, okay? Given that we're focused on ASP.NET Core, we're going to focus on this environment. But before I do that, I kind of want to at least walk through some of these different items that exist, okay? So first off, they're going to differentiate the software development kit versus the runtime, okay? The SDK stands for software development kit. If you're merely focused on building the app and you don't want to run the app, or necessarily just be a container to run apps, this is what the software development kit is, okay? It does contain the runtime because obviously since you're developing applications to run in the runtime, you ought to have the runtime in your environment so that when you are testing your app, you can ensure that the app is actually running in the runtime. So the SDK is going to come with the runtime itself. And notice what runtimes it actually comes with because it's bundling a few. .NET Core and ASP.NET Core, okay? So again, if you're new to this, you're not necessarily going to understand or how to differentiate between the two. So in basic terms, .NET Core are desktop applications, whereas ASP.NET Core are web applications, okay? So desktop versus web. And they are actually building a true like desktop environment, meaning, here, let me kind of just show you console versus like calc versus like, right, Google. So this would be a web application. This would be like the regular .NET Core, and this would be like the desktop environment. Okay. Although they may seem similar on the surface, they're actually quite different in nature in terms of how they were created and how they present themselves to the user consuming its services, right? So again, we're not going to go too deep right now, but just to give some more context into what exactly we're looking at. And so again, if you're merely focused on the .NET Core runtime, you would get it here, and then whatever flavor of operating system you're running versus desktop versus web. And so I'm going to go with the latest, and I want the SDK. So if you're wanting to follow along with me as well, you're going to want to focus on the SDK as well. And if you're running Windows 10, just make sure you're running the latest bits in Windows 10. Make sure you do your updates and stuff. And just set that stuff to auto update so that way you don't have to worry about it. Typically good practices to be in. I'm going to go ahead and grab the Windows 64-bit edition of the SDK so we can start leveraging all of these runtimes and building all of this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to hit this, and I'm just going to hit save. Personally, I like to save everything that I end up running. So I never run it by default. I always save it by default. I don't know if that is a consequence of just how I was brought into the ecosystem, but also it is generally like best practice that if you're running something and what if it failed, right? What if the installation went sideways and didn't complete as expected, right? You had some unintended consequences. If you didn't save it and if you don't know where you saved it, well, you're going to have to go and get it again. So it's typically best to download it into a central area as a staging area of sorts and leave it there. So that way, if you needed it again, you can go back to that location. And fortunately, we're provided such a location. It's actually called the downloads folder, right? So you can see the downloads folder here. Also, if you like grab this arrow and went to like your profile, went here, you can see downloads here as well. And so that's where it put itself. So typically whenever I am doing like an installation or grabbing stuff, I just let it all go to default to the downloads folder by default. And then from there, I'll move it out and save it to an appropriate location if needed. So here it is, the SDK version 3.1.2. And I'm going to run it. We're going to install. We're going to say yes. And install it. It shouldn't take too long. Also keep in mind that like I think I gave it 8 gigs of RAM and like 4 cores in its processor. The actual system that I have set up has like 40 gigs of RAM in it and like 6 cores. I think it's like a octa-core or something, 6 cores. So whatever that is, it's one of those things. And it's actually an AMD processor. It's not an Intel. It's an AMD Ryzen 5. I really like AMDs. I used to run them a lot in the past. But typically, given that I do this for a living, I've always had like work systems as well that were provided to me. And typically those are like Windows on Intel. Yeah, that. Okay, so we installed it. And let me close this out and I'm going to relaunch it again. I'm just going to hit Command to get the command prompt back and go here. And so everything was successful. So in order for us to like verify that it went okay, what we should do is type the .NET command at a command prompt. Okay, so we ran the installer, we downloaded it, ran the installation. Now we're going to verify the installation was successful. So I'm going to type dir just to type dir. The dir command lists all of the contents inside of a directory, dir, okay? And I'm at a command prompt here. Let me make this a little larger really quickly so that way you can at least see the type. And here, let me make one more adjustment. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so cool. I'll put this here. CLS will clear your screen. Okay, CLS clears the screen. So I'm going to type .net, and hopefully, yay, we can verify it's working, right? It actually responded. If it was not successful, like say, here I'm going to typo it because surely there isn't a program that exists called DXT okay? So say that the installation wasn't successful for some reason, right? And we went to actually type .net, and here is like the .net that failed, right? Notice that the command prompt, the shell, is actually telling us, hey, it doesn't know what that program is. It's not recognized as a command, and it's not anything that we can find in a batch file. So if our .NET installation failed for whatever reason, and we went to verify it, it would tell us that it doesn't know what it is. Fortunately, our installation was successful, and so when I typed .NET, it merely provided a usage prompt, meaning if you're trying to use .NET, try these options. You can type in H or help for help. You can display the .NET Core information and list what SDKs you have installed, as well as list any of the runtimes. So since we're going to want to build .NET, we're going to say, so right now, before I move forward, we're interacting with .NET Core. We are not interacting with ASP.NET Core, okay? So this is merely the console aspect of it. And so I just wanted to clarify that, okay? So what I'm going to do actually is I typically like to create a structured environment to hold all of my software, a folder. So I'm going to say make directory. Here, let me move the mouse. I'm going to make directory, and I typically call the folders that I use to hold source code source. So I'm going to type the command make directory, then I'm going to give the command the name of the directory that I want to create. So make directory source, and if I type dir to list all of the items in the directory, there's the thing I just created. And if you notice, like, hey, look, it just was created, literally, right? So now I want to go in the directory. So rather, I want to change the directory from where I am now into a different directory. So I'm going to type the change directory command, cd, and then I'm going to start spelling the directory that I want, S-O-U. And if I hit tab, it completes the word for me. But it has to be unique enough that it could complete it. Otherwise, it'll say like, hey, it doesn't know how to differentiate between, like, look at, if I just said S, and there's a saved and searches and source directory, if I hit tab, right, it'll attempt to find or provide the one I want, even if it may not be the one I want. Like when I did it the first time, it gave me saved games, and I didn't want that, so I had to hit it again. And that time I got searches. It didn't go until the third time when it provided source. So I'm going to cd into source, change directory, and notice that actually there's my whole complete path, right? So in this folder, I'm going to say .NET new, and I'm just going to call this funsies. I don't know how you spell funsies, but that's how I'm going to spell funsies. So I'm using the .NET Core runtime to create a new program called funsies. And somebody literally just rang my doorbell. So I'm going to hit enter real quick. Bam! That's awesome. It's doing stuff. It created things. And let me hit pause real quick. Well, actually, I'll be right back. I'm back. Sorry. Okay, that wasn't too long. It was like a minute. So, anyways, I created the new application. Oh, actually, no. What did I do? Haha. No, I didn't. So let's see what I did. Okay, so it understood that we wanted to do .NET. It's providing us some telemetry, and then it was getting ready to go. Oh, but then it said, hey, I couldn't find an installed template that matches the input. Searching online for one that does. So it knew that we were trying to create something new, right? Because I said .NET new funsies. So, all right, it got that far, but then it said, hey, we need more information. So you're going to have to tell us what kind of application you want to base your new application on. So what we can do is look at these templates that are provided and use this short name to tell .NET what type of application funsies is going to be. Okay? So here are the different applications that .NET can provide. Notice since we included the ASP .NET stuff in our software development kit, our SDK, we can do those as well. But look at all this stuff that we can build. Okay? So I'm going to just do a little console app real quick. So it gives us some examples. So I should have went new console, and then this is called funsies. And it still didn't like funsies. Okay, so what am I doing wrong now? Oh, I know what I'm doing. Haha. I just need to do this. There we go. Sorry. My bad. I just needed to do .NET new console. It wouldn't allow me to name it funsies like I was trying to do. So anyways, just understand that at times when you tread down a path that there are many different obstacles you come across. The most important thing is to keep moving forward. Like now, I just figured out that I was typing in that command wrong. So anyways, everything was good, right? We did it this time around. There it is, .NET new console. The console application was created successfully. It did post-creation actions. The whole thing took 102 milliseconds. The restore succeeded. So now I can go ahead and type dir, and here is all the stuff inside of my source directory. It gave me a csproj file, C# project. Okay, so the source is going to be in a C# project, and I have another file called program that's a C# file. Okay, and then the object directory and stuff. So we won't get into that right now, but let me do this. I want to show you the contents of that. But as of right now, I don't have what they call a code editor. Okay, I have TextPad, right? Remember, I'm in a basic brand new installation of Windows 10. So it has stuff in here, but I don't necessarily have the licensing for it right now, right? Like, you know how when you get a new computer or a laptop or whatever, it might give you Word, but like you didn't buy Word. So like it gave me OneNote, right? It's giving me this stuff, but so I can actually use Notepad, and I'm going to say open, and I'm just going to go to my profile real quick, find the source folder, and I'm just going to say all files, because remember, it's not a text file I want to open, it's actually a C# file I want to open. So here's the program.cs file that was created when I ran the .NET command, and I'm going to say open. There it is. That's the file that was created. That is literally a program, okay? It is a program, and this program is going to write a line that states hello world, okay? So I can go over here, and I believe I can just say what, .NET run? .NET run should build it. There it is. First program, hello world. Oops. I wanted to get text or notepad. This. I wanted this again. And file. Open. All files. Open. So how many lines is this? 1. So about 12 lines of code. Maybe 11, 10 if you take all the white space, right? About 12 right here. All right, so notice LN, lines. So I'm at line number 12, and the mouse is technically at column 2, right? 1, 2, okay. So all of this code is, think of it as scaffolding, or think of it as plumbing, or boilerplate stuff, okay? Everything other than the line I have highlighted at this point are the things we need just to make the program, okay? All the program actually did was write a line to the console called Hello World. Quite literally, here is a console with a single line with the term Hello World there. So this program literally wrote that. All of this code generated this, okay? So just keep that in mind. And also keep in mind, look, we're in Notepad right now. This isn't the ideal place to develop code, okay? We're going to get an ideal place. We're going to get Visual Studio Code for now. And next time around, we're going to get Visual Studio proper, okay? So for now, I'm just going to go Visual Studio Code rather, and I'm going to go download for Windows. And again, I'm going to hit save and then open the folder to run it. And again, we're just going to accept the defaults. I do want a desktop icon, and I actually like being having the ability to like right click on something and have open with code in the context menus. That's what when you right click on something and see that little menu that pops up, that's called a context menu. And notice that it's adding it to the path as well, okay? And that requires a shell restart. And I'll explain what that is in a second. So then I'm going to hit next and install. So awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and let it launch. So I'm going to hit finish. If you didn't want it to launch, you can uncheck that box. And so here, they typically call this the command prompt, right? This is the prompt in which you enter commands, right? But this whole thing can be thought of as like a shell. This is a text user interface, whereas this whole thing is a graphical user interface. Only text, graphics, okay? So this text area is a shell, right? And remember when it asked if we wanted to add the path and that we would have to restart our shell? This is the thing we'd have to restart. So I'm going to close it and I'm going to open it back up. And that's quite literally restarting my shell, okay? And remember, I'm going to change directories into source, and I'm just going to hit dir just so I can see the contents. There are my contents. What that checkbox allowed us to do is this. Type in the word code, and I'm going to hit period. So the name of the actual program for Visual Studio Code is called code. That's why I typed code there. And then when I said period, it means open up code and open the folder, or open this application code up in its current directory. That's what I'm doing with this command right now. Code is the name of the program, and then period means, hey, do it here, right? Let's do it here, open up that folder. So that way we can see all the contents, okay? If we didn't check the box, Remember how I showed if we didn't install .NET correctly, what would happen? The command prompt wouldn't know what to do. Same scenario. It wouldn't have known what to do with the code command because we didn't add it to the path. Okay? So I'm going to hit code. I didn't find it. So I didn't find it either? Okay, so arg. So is there another shell that I have opened or something? Let me close this. Let me close this. I'll close that. Yeah, close all the tabs. All right, just making sure I didn't have anything in the background that might have held it open. No, I didn't see anything. Okay, so I literally closed all the things. And let's see if this works now. Code. No. So something happened. It didn't get added to the path correctly. Did I not check the box? I thought I checked the box. Here, look at properties and advanced system settings and environment variables. There's our path. Let's go edit real quick. There's .NET. So yeah, it's not added. Is it added over here? Path, edit. Yeah, no, it's not there. Did I not check the box? I thought I did. Anyways. Oh, well, I should have said something here. Look. This is quite literally the path it's talking about. There's a user path and a system path. And the path, let's do system. And the path exists all of the directories or all of the paths to the directories that contain the programs that you're going to be holding, okay? Or executing, rather. So here's all the places that Windows knows to go and look for the command you're trying to run. And I just don't know off the top of my head where Visual Studio Code is at, or I'd go do it. So here it is. And then I'm just going to open folder, and I'm going to browse to my profile, the source, and I'm going to hit select folder. Awesome. And then there's our program. And there it is. And notice over here, check this out. It's being super helpful. It said, hey, look, we noticed that you have a C# file opened. And we recommend that you install these things, okay? And so basically what it's recommending is that we install the plugin that provides syntax highlighting and analysis of the C# code itself. Notice, check this out, it's installing it. OmniSharp gets installed, the Razor language server got installed, and the debugger for .NET got installed. And it's saying, hey, in order to do this stuff, we need to install some missing things. Do you want to add them? And I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, let's do it. Add them, please. Be helpful, why don't you? And so here we are. And I'm going to say, go over here to our terminal. Look at our terminal is PowerShell, right? Our terminal is PowerShell. And in PowerShell, we can type ls as opposed to dir to get a listing of everything in the directory. And so notice, since I am now technically in a code editor, and this code editor understood that it was a C# file, look what it did for us. Syntax highlighting. And look, tooltips and prompts. Notice these things are different colors. The different colors, can I do a zoom in real quick? Let's, here, I'm just going to do a Control++. That'll do it. It does everything, but what else? Okay, check this out. Using is one color, system's another. Namespace, class, static. So all the blue, those are keywords. All the blue are keywords that we're not allowed to use. So we can never use class in terms of trying to provide meaning to class. It's a reserved word. It's a keyword. Same thing with namespace and static and void and console. Okay. Program and source and system, they can be thought of like libraries or books that contain things or a filing cabinet that has a bunch of your papers, right? System has a bunch of stuff. Source has one thing. It's called program. And what does program do? Well, it writes a line of code, okay? So all of the highlighting is meant to help us, the human. The computer doesn't care. The human cares. And the syntax highlighting helps us identify areas that are problematic. Notice, what happens if I delete that little thing right there? I'll move that. You notice the difference in what it did? Check that out. There's a problem. It even tells us, hey, it expected that there was a semicolon there. What's going on? Static analysis. That's static analysis. Microsoft will at times call it IntelliSense. But that's the thing in the background, reading our code for us and trying to be proactive. Hey, don't run that code. There's something wrong. Look it, there's a little light bulb. It's telling us things, right? So it's providing suggestions as well. And we got that as a benefit to running that plugin that we did. So all of this stuff exists in .NET Core for us to play with. So I think actually it's a good time for us to hit pause and stop. So let me go here. Yes, hi there. So what we did to recap was I built a Windows 10 virtual machine. In this Windows 10 virtual machine, I installed the .NET Core Software Development Kit version 3.1.2, okay? And with the SDK, I got a bunch of runtimes and a bunch of templates that allowed me to build a program. The first program I built was the default .NET console application program, and that program did one thing. It wrote a line called Hello World to the console. But it did it successfully, and it did it great. And it was happy when it completed it, right? So that was the first thing we did, and it's kind of the only thing we did. It took about 30 minutes to kind of walk through that process. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video now, and I'll have it up. I'll share it via YouTube. So that way, if you join us at a later time, you can always go back and catch up to where we are. Again, pay no attention to all the crap I have back there. Right? Don't look, don't look, don't look. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and hit stop now. And in the days and weeks to come, as we transition our meetup to the online space, we'll just pick up where we left off. And so next time around, we're actually going to build our first ASP.NET Core app, okay? And again, I still have a book to give away, so hopefully I'll be able to give away that book soon, okay? Well, you enjoy the night, stay safe, and I'll see you later.